Coming up on Good Journeys.
It wasn't until I joined the Olympic squad with Ireland that I realised that striving performance and perfection will only, in my experience, lead to burnout. We can train our bodies, but where are we training our emotional health, our mental health? And actually, when I started coaching the athletes a little differently and making sure that they were looking at all the processes around training, not necessarily how they were running or swimming, they made great leaps and bounds. And I had to give a talk to the Olympic Council about what we'd changed. And I just stood up and said, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to disappoint a lot of you, because change came in training the softer skills, the sleep hygiene, meditation, the mindset, breath work, all of these softer skills, coaching the human, not just the athlete. To help people, I needed to evolve myself into a coach that coached the whole person, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of that.
Welcome to Good Journeys with Ben Veal and Sarah Moon, and one very special guest who I've had the absolute pleasure of knowing and journeying through life with for a long, long time. Andy Mackenzie is a breathwork facilitator and holistic coach who helps people to create real change from the inside out. With a background spanning the British Army, international sport and holistic wellbeing, Andy now combines breathwork, mindset and lived experience to help others to find clarity, resilience and a deeper connection to who they truly are. He is the creator of Dare to Become You framework and the founder of Breath Shift, a new breathwork and meditation platform built to help people shift their state and come home to themselves. Andy, welcome to Good Journeys. Finally, we've made it happen.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute privilege.
So full disclosure, Andy was supposed to be on this show well over a year ago, probably 18 months ago, around about the time that his book came out. And I promoted that Andy was going to be like the next guest on the show. But then life got in the way and I needed a season of pause and reset. And we were saying before starting recording that this is a perfect time with Sarah now on the show, bringing lovely new energy to the show and us coming back and having a rebirth. It feels like the perfect time for this to finally happen. And I'm sure we get a much better conversation because you get Sarah asking you questions now as well.
That's what Andy told me. He was waiting for me to arrive. He was waiting. He knew.
Hang on, did he engineer this?
Yeah, he engineered it.
Yeah,
I manifested it secretly.
Look, Andy, I almost don't know where to start with you because, I mean, we met 15 years ago when you were running a gym, and it was a gym with a real difference. It wasn't like all the gyms I've gone to in the past, which are full of like big buff bodybuilders and mirrors everywhere. This was a real gym that was about community and well-being. That's where you and I have met. And over the years, I've got to know you in so many different ways. But let's take it back to the beginning. Your journey, as I said in the intro, has taken you from a British Army into international sport, into breathwork, into holistic coaching. What led you to realizing that the path you're on right now is what you wanted to pursue?
Oh, good question. I think all of us in life can only live what's in front of us. And when you're living authentically, you put all of your energy into what's in front of you. And when I was growing up, I had quite a strict upbringing. My dad was, he'd been schooled in boarding schools, then joined the military. So everything was quite strict. And my upbringing was all about performance and doing things well and getting praise for doing things well. And then I was brought up in the era where you could get the wooden spoon and the slipper if you didn't. And so I was quite driven. So I needed to perform. When I realized that didn't get me the love I wanted from my dad, I started to non-perform because that got me attention, that got me the wooden spoon. But I left home quite quickly. At 18, I was growing up on the Isle of Wight, left home, hitchhiked out to Italy where my mum was living. I hadn't seen her since I was 9. And it was a lovely time because I got to reinvent myself and I got to do what I wanted to do. I changed, my name's Andrew, but everyone calls me Andy except when I'm naughty. But I got to become Andy Mackenzie, and I got the freedom to go and explore what I wanted to do. And I was heading off to join the French Foreign Legion, but I met a girl in Italy and ended up staying there like 4 years. but eventually, military is where I wanted to be. So I joined the British Army, and an environment where when you perform, you get promoted and you get to do things well. And I was like doing really well, promoted very quickly. And then one fateful day, we had an army fitness test, and I won the fitness test. It's press up, sit ups, and then this mile run. And I came in first on the mile run. And our colonel had an email saying that the regiment needed to send people to the Army Modern Pentathlon Championships because they hadn't had any representation, and yet one of our officers had won a bronze medal at the Olympics. So it's something that our regiment should be doing. So I got sent off with about 3 weeks training to learn fencing and pistol shooting. And I ended up winning the intermediate, which is for first timers. And so then got put into sport, and I went down and trained at Sandhurst full time, got very good again. Another thing that rewarded you for putting effort in for performance. And so I very quickly, I was in the world championship team a year later. I was at Bath Uni training full time a year after that. And then 3 years into this, I was British #1 for modern pentathlon.
Wow.
Didn't make the 2004 games, a torn meniscus in my knee, and went into coaching. And then, this is then when sort of we met. I left the army. My wife at the time was pregnant with our first child, and I wasn't overly enamored with the way the British Army was going or my career was going. I didn't join the army to fight wars, and we were, currently in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I just thought, I need a break from this. But it wasn't until I joined the Olympic squad with Ireland and started training people that I realized that striving performance and perfection will only get you too far, but it will only always, in my experience, lead to burnout. We can train our bodies, but where are we training our emotional health, our mental health? And actually, when I started coaching the athletes a little differently and making sure that they were looking at all the processes around training, not necessarily how they were running or swimming, they made great leaps and bounds. And an incredible athlete called Arthur Lanigan O'Keefe, I took over in 2014. He was a mid-table athlete. Yes, he had won bronze as a junior, but in senior level, he was finishing sort of 10 to 14th. A year later, he won the European Championships here at Bath University, qualified for Rio. And I had to give a talk to the Olympic Council about what we'd changed. And all of the performance directors are there like, oh, what's the training secret, et cetera, et cetera. And I just stood up and said, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to disappoint a lot of you, because the change came in training the softer skills, the sleep hygiene, the meditation, the mindset, breath work, all of these softer skills, coaching the human, not just the athlete. And it was in those moments that I just realized, look, I love helping and connecting with people and helping them find their direction and purpose. But that needs more than just training them physically. And so I suppose that's a long-winded way of answering your question, of saying basically to help people, I needed to evolve myself into a coach that coached the whole person, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of that.
Yeah, and I think, my observation, Sarah, is like you were pretty ahead of your time as well. There's a lot of talk around this now, but I don't think people, there's certainly the time we met and you were talking to me about this kind of stuff, I don't think people really focused on this really. There was so much focus on physical appearance, and certainly within men's fitness, getting as ripped and shredded as buff as you could be and getting up at 5 a.m. and getting in for your early workout, like the real kind of burnout crew. That was a really big thing when I was early in my career. And I think you were quite ahead of the curve in realizing that actually mental health needs to be absolutely above all else.
I think it was brought home to me when I had my own breakdown. The time when we met, when I was running the gym, I didn't know at the time that I had bipolar, but I do. But one of the things about bipolar is it gives you this sense of invincibility, and also this sense that you are able to do anything that you basically choose and want. And I started the gym. It was really good. But, and here's the crux, I wanted to train people to be functionally fit for life, not big muscles. And so I interviewed a few personal trainers, and none of them were into that. They just wanted people to get big and muscly kind of. And so I didn't employ anybody. It was just me in the gym from 6 a.m. till 10 at night, 7 days a week. And it started off well, but I needed to do some marketing. So I hired an agency, and they came in, cost me a lot of money, brought maybe 3 or 4 customers through the door. And I thought, do you know what I can do? But I can do this better. And this was right back, at the very infancy of Facebook, etc. And so I started doing my own marketing and got really good at it, especially localized marketing. So then, as you do through a gym, you have conversations with people where they go, oh, I'm struggling in my business, I can't get customers. And I was like, well, I can do that for you. So I set up a second business where I started a marketing agency, and I helped local businesses get better and all the rest of it. And then an opportunity came up where I was working through Bannatyne spas. I spoke to the general manager, and I said, look, you're doing these red letter days where people come, they have a lovely spa experience, and then they go home with Elemis products. Why aren't you selling them Bannatyne products? And they said, we've tried and we can't get it across the line. So I was like, look, I know lots of people in the beauty industry. I'll create a skincare for you. And so it took me like 2 years, but I ended up having a sort of one-to-one Dragon's Den with Duncan Bannatyne in his main office, and got the skincare across the line. But I ended up running 4 businesses then. And there was this fateful day where 2, bless them, lovely ladies came over and just said to me, Andy, how do we start these treadmills? And it's the most simplest question, but I suppose it was the straw that broke my back. And I said to them, I said, look, just go over there and I'll be with you in a moment. And if you remember, we had an upstairs part to the gym, and underneath was like a Harry Potter cupboard. And I opened the door to this cupboard and just got inside, and I just broke down, physically, mentally, emotionally gone. I called my wife and I said to her, I said, look, I'm just under the stairs and I can't come out. I was done. I was literally done. I spent the next months basically just living with a baseball cap and a hoodie up, looking at my own feet. I couldn't even face talking to my wife and my kids. And that led me to really dark times where from a history where my brain was only ever about performance and perfection, I got introduced to a brain that questioned everything I was about, even questioned me as a human. You're failing your wife, you're failing your business, you're failing your kids. What value do you have? And I ended up having 2 very serious suicide attempts. That the last one put me in Green Lane Mental Hospital, and I was drugged up to the eyeballs and just living like a zombie, really. But part of the recovery, there are people, and I will say this, there are people who get a lot of benefit out of talking therapies. I was not one of them. I didn't get why I needed to talk about all of my trauma to move forward, because actually just living it time and time again, like even now, talking about that moment still gets me quite emotional. And, I've kind of a bit shaky. So why would I go there? So I started evolving my own methods of sort of getting better. I explored breathwork. Oh my gosh, what a revelation. We all breathe. I know you 2 are breathing because you're alive in front of me. So well done. You breathe well.
Thank you.
But is it optimal? Are we breathing? And I found breathwork, and there are multiple styles, can shift your state quicker than anything. Like if I said to you both right now, don't think of an elephant. Do not think of a pink elephant in a tutu. Do not think of a pink elephant in a tutu riding a big bus. You can't not think about it. So when you're in those situations and you're going, oh, just calm down, just calm, stop feeling depressed, stop feeling this. You can't, you can't unthink things. But you can talk to your nervous system. You can talk to that thing, that innate immune and innate autonomic system that is always scanning for danger and threat, and say to it, do you know what? Right here, right now, I'm safe. Right here, right now, I can calm down. And just by, again, everyone says take a deep breath. It's not the deep breath in that matters. It's the soft, gentle exhale. Exhaling longer than you breathe in softens everything. And so when I started exploring all of these more holistic-y style of therapies, cold water, meditation, etc., I realized that I made more progress through these methods. And so ultimately, that's where my own experience led me to finding ways to come through it and manage it, which then led me to develop the Dare to Become You kind of framework. Discover who you truly are. I think a lot of us, we go through life firstly being told who to be by our parents, by our teachers, by society. We then take all of that and fall into jobs and relationships, and then we're kind of told by them who to be. And you get so far down your line in life and you go, who the hell am I? You know, and when you take off all the caps of what you are, you go, I'm not even sure what my hobbies are, what my likes are, what my interests are. And so discover who you truly are. Accept who you are. Because, sorry.
I was going to say, I think that's hugely relatable, Andy. Like, you know, I myself have experienced panic attacks, anxiety, you know, sort of all the burnout stuff. I actually had a seizure a couple of years ago just from not sleeping enough and thinking I had to be, you know, kind of on all the time. And the seizure was bad, but it was actually the impact after, because I didn't expect that seizure to happen. And so then afterwards, I'm walking around thinking, am I a ticking time bomb? Is this going to happen again? And that induced the panic attacks. And you're absolutely right that sort of every time that the panic attacks would happen, and, you know, a couple of times I would be in situations where you don't want to be having a panic attack on a dual carriageway or, you know, etc. And it was definitely that out breath that just, you know, stopped everything and just sort of, you know, kept it kind of all together, as it were. So on that, if somebody sort of hasn't had the experience of breath work and they do think it is just breathing in and out, what would you say to them about sort of exploring, you know, breath work and where they can start?
Great question. I'm glad that you found solace in breath as well, because it is one of the biggest and fastest shift states. The first thing I would love everybody to do with breath work is do what we call breath awareness. Like literally without any judgment, without any trying to change anything, just find a quiet space and sit, listening, feeling your breath. Do you breathe through your nose or your mouth? Does it land in your chest, or does it land lower in your abdomen, your bottom of your ribs? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Is it fast? You know, can you hear it on the way in and the way out, or is it quiet? And so when I work one-to-one with people for breath work, that's where we start. And there's a scoring system for this. So I would observe your breath and then score you on it just to see whether you are breathing functionally or what they call dysfunctionally. Anxiety, there's a lot of science to suggest that a lot of low-level anxiety is actually to do with our breath pattern, not necessarily a state of mind. Our nervous system is constantly scanning to understand whether we are safe where we are or whether we're not safe where we are. And for everybody who's gone running, what's the first thing that happens when you start running? Your breath rate increases, and often it comes here. So if you're breathing in a fast pattern and your breath is here, you are sending signals down into your body that you aren't safe. You could potentially be running away from threat and danger. So we've got to calm. We've got to regulate. And the best way is to breathe in through your nose. We're designed to breathe in through our nose, but we can breathe through our mouth, just like We are designed to eat through our mouth, but we can take food through our nose. They're interchangeable, but one is more optimal. Your nasal cavity goes right back. It has 3 channels on each side, and they are designed to pressurize your breath, to warm your breath, to humidify it and clean it, so that breath lands in your bottom lung really perfect for absorption. So breathe in through your nose. And if you don't have sort of diaphragmic control, so your out breath is quite fast, purse your lips as if you're about to blow a whistle and restrict the airflow. So we breathe in to a comfortable fullness. Don't overdo the in-breath. And then you just breathe out.
All I can do in this conversation is just think about how I'm breathing. Like, I spent the last 10 minutes just focusing on my breathing, which is great, because it shows that the conversation is doing its job. I wanted to ask you, Andy, about you talked at the start about performance. So you talked about, growing up with your father. Obviously, you move into these very high performance environments, say the military, elite sport, where it's all about performance and it's all about success. How did that affect you personally when, I guess, you moved away from that world? And I guess it's a bit like, well, it's moving back in civilian life, really, isn't it? Like, you move away from that framework, you're back in the normal world, and you've got to kind of find your purpose and your own identity. What was that kind of self-discovery journey like for you?
God, that's a good question.
We ask for good questions on this show.
I tell you what, you're good on this podcast. Do you know what I found? Purpose isn't enough. I set off with a real conscious purpose. The gym, for example, and even my work now. What I learned through elite sport was I've worked with some incredible athletes at Olympic level, and their drive and determination is incredible. But there is so much science and so much, the environment is so incredible around these athletes that as long as they are engaged and giving it 100%, they're going to do well, or they will do well if they've got talent. There's a lovely phrase that said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So as long as you've got talent and you work hard, you're going to perform. And these athletes were really performing. But what I found out in the general population, and I think we're almost at risk of this even more now, especially with social media, is everybody's an expert. And everybody, like, for example, at the moment, there was an article in the Times newspaper about how breathwork is going to become the new yoga, because there are so many more studies about how breathwork impacts various different people and different illnesses, etc., that everybody's currently a breathwork expert, and they're giving advice. And they're giving advice sort of, for example, like you hear a lot of people talking about coherent breathing, 5-5 breathing, because a particular study said that if we breathe less than 6 times a minute, it really drops us into that parasympathetic, that rest and digest. But, and this is the thing, what people are doing is they're prescribing a breath that's 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. But when you breathe in, your lungs fill up this thoracic cavity around your heart and apply pressure to your heart. And when you breathe out, that cavity gets bigger or less full of your lungs. And so your heart can expand and slow down. In that moment, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate drops. So actually, if we're trying to calm people down, your inhale needs to be shorter than your exhale. And your total breath needs to be under 6 minutes, sort of a 4-6 breath, or even a 4-7 if you get more comfortable. So there's people prescribing things because they've seen it and they want to be current. But there needs to be more people who are actually experts delivering this. And I think what I set out for was to be that person, to bring what I knew from elite sport and my love of science and performance, and then bring it to everybody. But as I say, that's my purpose. But what I found was focusing just on everybody else wasn't good enough again for me. And I really struggled in the early days. What performance sport and what the military give you is structure and routine.
Yeah.
And I found myself giving so much to everybody else, and my routine went out the window. And what I really learned very quickly, because I would fluctuate, my bipolar would raise its head, and I'd realize, oh man, yeah, you're not doing your things. So I have to set time now. I have to get up. I have to exercise. I have to do my own breath work. I have to keep my nutrition on track, my sleep hygiene, everything for me. So whilst I initially sort of rebuked a bit about military and performance, the structure they gave me, I actually really needed to step back into. And that was my biggest lesson, was that a lovely lady, actually, as I was coming out of my therapy, out of the mental hospital, said to me, Andy, just remember, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
And that phrase keeps on thrashing back into my mind every time I realize I'm not taking care of myself.
Are you searching for meaning and purpose in your life, or do you need inspiration to help you with the journey ahead? I'm Ben Veal, and my new book, Good Journeys, is all about exploring the inspiring lessons learned from some truly incredible people. Over the last 4 years, I've had the privilege of speaking with best-selling authors, with internationally known athletes and actors, with activists, with everyday heroes, with business founders, asking them what success looks like, where they find joy in their lives, and how they've coped with hard times. This book, Good Journeys, is the distillation of that. This is a book that's all about how you navigate the ups and downs of life and do so with purpose. It's a collection of 25 incredibly inspiring stories from amazing people from all around the world. It's designed to be dipped into, to be lingered over, to write in the margins, to be a companion for you in your daily life. With a foreword from Sir Terry Waite and contributions from the likes of Autumn Reeser, Sir Alexander McCall-Smith, Chris Van Vliet, Gemma Hunt, Pete Warmby, Dr. Stuart Faramond, and so many more incredibly inspiring people. Good Journeys by Ben Veal is available now from the greatbritishbookshop.co.uk and from Amazon. I actually have that on my desk, would you believe? Someone told me, someone I respect in the world of marketing said that to me 15 years ago. A very successful CEO who I used to always wonder, how do you do what you do? And she said that to me one day in an email, and I put it on a little post-it, and I've carried that with me in every job I've had. I'm dreadful at drinking my own medicine. I think that's the phrase, taking my own medicine. But It's a constant reminder that actually you can't give. And I think with, Sarah and I and you, I think we're all wired very similarly. Like Sarah and I, one of the reasons that we gravitated towards each other so much, and I felt like the chemistry was right to do this show, is because we're both very, very high functioning creatives bordering on burnout consistently, because we do so much. And like you, we are wearing probably far more hats than we should, but we can't help it because it's in our nature. Like, you've listed the amount of things you've done in your life. It's the same as the amount of things Sarah's done, same as me. Like, we've done all these different things because that's how our brains are wired. And you have to constantly, like now, as Sarah knows, like, I go for a coffee and a sit down every morning after school drop off. Before full disclosure for anyone that's watching or listening to this episode had to happen after I'd had my morning coffee and my sit, because I recalibrate doing that. And I'm in a season of life now where if I don't have my morning coffee and my sit in my local coffee shop, the rest of the day goes out the window. So yeah, those routines, whatever they are, whatever they look like, I think they're absolutely essential, aren't they, to navigate. What are yours, Sarah? What are your things that you do to avoid burnout?
Well, interestingly, so I'm currently sat in an office in my garden, and actually this has been a game changer for me because I was working in the house for nearly 7 years, and it was just too much. It was just overwhelm, and actually just being out here, and then when I finish at the end of the day, on the other side of my desk, I've got a walking pad. And so now I put my walking pad on. When I finish my day, I go on there for 20 minutes with a podcast on, and then I go inside to face, what's there with kids and life, etc.
Like a treadmill?
Yeah, it's like a treadmill.
What's a walking pad?
Well, I think it's because they're just
TikTok,
made...
mate.
Yeah.
I try to avoid it.
I think they're made so you can run on it, but like for me anyway, it's not like as much as I'd like to get back into running. For me now, it's about actually that movement after I've had a really long day. And I know when I haven't done it because if I go back in and somebody says something, I'm triggered. So actually, I just need that 20 minutes of a podcast that I love with, obviously, I'll be listening to ours now, of course, but, with,
you won't, trust me, give it a few weeks.
No, I know. But no, yeah, my favorite podcast or an audiobook, walking on there, and that just sets me up to go back in and face whatever, the teenagers have to throw at me.
And
So
do your family know that? Do they know that that's your routine and that you're kind of essentially locked in your shed, in your creative hub, and that you're not coming out until you've done that? Or is it like when you ran a bath half in secret? Are you just like, have you just revealed this to the world and now your family are going to find out?
I know, exactly, all the secrets. No, it is something because actually they come out and they come and say, "When's dinner?" And I'm like, "I'm doing my walking. Once I've done this, then I'll be back in." And actually, you know what? I think it's really important to share these things with the kids, particularly because, Andy, you touched on, us being brought up in different eras, etc. And, like my parents did sort of work out and move, etc. And I saw that. But actually, there was other things that, I didn't know they did. It was kind of kept behind, closed doors for sort of wellness or, whatever. Like my mum had a thing, which, where she would wind down in the evening and, chill out, etc. But she never spoke to me about that because it just wasn't a thing as to kind of like, how do you reset your nervous system? So actually, I think now we have this awareness and I think it's really important to model it to our kids. I'm actually booked to go to an evening tonight, which a local female PT is running for women. And normally I'm out at work stuff and I found myself starting to justify, "Oh, I've booked onto this evening, but it's because I've been working loads and because and my husband was like, "It's fine, just go. You don't have to justify." Do you know what I mean? So I'm still probably slightly in that mindset of justification, but actually trying to improve and just realize that, as you say, that your cup or your glass or whatever has to be full so you can fill others.
And again, I mean, a lot of our audience are in a similar life stage to us. They've got young kids, they're kind of things like breathwork, nutrition, physical well-being are things that we kind of think, oh, we'll do that when there's a chance. And that's always me. Like I'm thinking, I wake up and you're thinking about what all the family needs before you ever get to yourself. And again, going back to that pour from an empty cup analogy, it's so important. It's the same analogy as that whole thing we used to say on airlines, isn't it? About how you put the oxygen mask on yourself before your child. Like it's so important, I think, to try and find whatever it is that works for you. I mean, my dad he worked about 2.5 miles away. Come rain or shine, every day he walked to work and came home carrying his briefcase. And I never understood it throughout my whole childhood. We had a car. He was going to the other side, miles away. And I only understood it as an adult. I was like, oh yeah, he did that because that gave him 40 minutes on either side of his work as a complete buffer. And that was all the physical exercise he needed because he'd walked 4 to 5 miles every day, probably at a fast pace as well, knowing my dad. So, it's like you have to find your thing. And a big impetus for this podcast even existing, like the only reason this podcast exists is because it was walking that got me. It was walking and listening to podcasts that got me out of myself when I was at my lowest point. And I thought, maybe there's something in there. Maybe I can create that space. And what would be amazing for me is to know if there's anyone out there who's like listened to this show whilst going out on walks and it's helped them, because this show has been inspired by other people who, people like Fern Cotton's Happy Place and Dr. Chatterjee's Live Better, Feel More. I've talked about those shows a lot before, like as real influences. Like when you hear deep dive, like the conversation we're having today, people being open and honest and realizing that everyone is struggling with their own stuff. I want to ask about this book of yours because it's a book and it's for framework. So here we are, just flogging your book for you. Dare to Become You by Andy Mackenzie. But this is part of this kind of wider framework. Do you want to talk us through the framework about Andy and the core principles behind it and what it's all about, really, who it's for?
Yeah. Firstly, I'll just touch on what Sarah said, if that's okay, because I think, and what you just talked about, we all are if your best friend walked in through the door right now, you would intrinsically know what to say to them, how to make them feel better, and all the rest of it. But the voice we use on ourselves is not that voice. And actually setting boundaries feels awkward at times. Setting time, it feels selfish. But like you were saying about the walking, your dad doing, etc., setting those boundaries is actually beneficial for both you and everybody else. You don't snap when you go back in. You're more you're a much better human when you've taken that time. And I think, there's a lovely phrase that says self-love is not selfish. Yet we're brought up to not think about ourselves, to put others first. And I think it's really important. And I suppose leading into the book, that's where my framework came out of this D.A.R.E. It was a challenge I gave to myself to actually step back into being more authentically me as I came out of this depression. And it was that discovering who I am, accepting who I am, because we're not all beautiful angels. We have parts of us that, we can't tolerate certain things, or we don't like certain things. And we can berate ourselves for those, but actually they're part of our DNA. Now, if it's something that needs changing, then please do the work. But actually, some of it's just who you are. Then there's the releasing, D.A.R.E, which is like releasing those limiting beliefs. Most of us learn our responses to life by the time we're sort of 8 or 9. And there's a lovely story about the baby elephant. And when elephants are taken out of the jungle, they have this huge rope tied around their legs so they can't escape. And they spend weeks and months tugging at this rope, but they're only small little elephants. They can't break the rope. Now, you fast forward to sort of 2 or 3 years later when they're huge elephants. There came a point when they just went, that's my lot in life. This rope is bigger than me. And they accepted it. And so they don't tug at the rope, and they can take the rope off. They can go, they can move big logs, lorries, etc. But when they come back, they're tied up. They don't try and break it, even though they could. And I always challenge people, what's still tied around your ankle that you learned when you were a child, but that is no longer true? When I turned 50 a few years ago, I was coming up with like 50 things to do at 50, that whole midlife crisis, suppose. And my daughter said to me, she said, oh, you should put skateboarding on there. And I was like, oh, no. When I was 13, I got a penny board, put my foot on it, pushed off. I ended up on my back, bruised, ego sort of smattered on the floor. And I never tried again. And obviously, she hears me talking a lot, so she just turned around to me and said, Dad, that sounds like a limiting belief. I was like, oh, my gosh. I was like, oh, my gosh, I'm getting life coached by my own daughter. And so anyway, for my 50th birthday, they brought me a longboard. And guess what? I have more balance. I have more coordination. And I put my foot on it. Yes, I was wobbly, but I can longboard, I can skateboard. And now it sits in the back of my car. So anywhere I park up and there's like a nice car park with a little tilt on it, it's out and I'm having 5 minutes. Now, there's something that I wouldn't have back in my life if I hadn't been coached by my daughter. Firstly, if anybody wants to be coached by her, I'll give you a number. But, how many things are still tied around our ankles? And then I suppose E is about empowerment. Doing brave things. We've all had phases in our life, and in our lives, we get exposed to new things, new thoughts, new understandings, better understandings of ourselves. And I love a 3-word structure. If you could live your life by 3 words, my 3 words would be becoming, evolving, and cultivate. Becoming, because I am always becoming something better, a newer version, but that is allowed to grow however it wants. There's a lovely poem by Ram Dass that talks about the beauty of trees and how if you walk into a forest, you look at all of the trees and some are bent, some are fallen over, some are skewed and all the rest of it. And you look at these trees, but you don't judge them. You go, oh my gosh, yeah, the wind came through, it blew that one down, but look, it's growing again. And you see the beauty of the storm and the weather and everything. But when you walk into a forest of people, all we do is judge. Look at the hat, look at the shoes, look at the clothes, look at how he's talking, da, 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 da. We should all become more like trees. And so allow yourself to evolve with the knowledge that you gain as you go through life. And then lastly, cultivate your habits, cultivate your environment, because ultimately all of us, and this might hurt a few people, we are all where we are because we have accepted the habits and environment that we live in. If you want change, you have to change either a habit you have or the environment you're in. And that environment can be work, friends, relationships, all kinds of things. But, and this is where I suppose a bit of my book goes into how and why. The how will often stay true and not change, but it's the why that's important. When I was in Sandhurst, I had this guy come to me who was failing our military tests, which meant he had to get up early at like 6 o'clock in the morning, twice a week, to do extra physical exercise. It's an absolute, pain in the ass. And he said, oh, I'm fed up of getting up at 6 to get rifted around the parade square. And he said, right, what can we do? And I said, right, look, come to the gym on lunch times and I'll give you a little program. We can do it. Give it a few months and we'll see difference. 2.5 weeks later, he gave up, never saw him again, which on an army camp is quite hard because we're all behind barbed wire. 3.5 months later, calls me up and he says, Andy, I need to start training with you again. And I was like, mate, let's not bother. You're just going to come. It's going to be hard. You're going to not want to do the hard work and you're going to quit. And he said, no, I need to come and see you. So he came and saw me. Bless him. He burst into tears the minute he sat down. And he told me this story about how his son was getting bullied at school because his dad was overweight. And you know what kids are like? It's like, how can your dad be in the army when he looks like that? He couldn't even chase a crisp packet, And So I said to him, I said, right, come on, let's train. Let's do this. He has probably trained harder than any athlete I've ever trained. All right. He now runs ultra distances. He did the Dragon Back race from North Wales to South Wales in 6 days, fit as a butcher's dog. The how, the training in the gym never changed. The why was everything. When it was just his want to get fitter, not enough. When his son was getting beaten up and had a black eye, he couldn't do anything but change. So he had to change his habits. He had to change. And so I suppose if anybody's trying to do anything, really delve down into your why. And if your why is not strong enough, go through. There's a lovely, sorry, just to keep on talking, but there is a lovely system developed by Kawasaki, actually, where they try to make their operating systems more efficient. And they call it the 5 whys. So when you come up with your first why am I doing this? Oh, well, I just want to get fit. No. Why do you want to get fit? Well, I'm a little overweight and it'd be nice not to be overweight. Yeah, but why would it be nice not to be overweight? And you drill down and down and down until you get to the why that is the actual reason, the reason that will get you up in the morning when it's raining, the reason that you'll go out when it's aching, all of those things. So, yeah, so the book covers a lot of that. Sorry.
Never apologize.
That story was, Andy, that story literally, I'm glad you were talking because I don't think I could for a second. So it was, that's a big story. So thanks for sharing that with us, definitely. And actually that kind of leads on to the next question that I had for you was about resilience. Resilience is a word that, gets flung around a lot today. We hear the word resilience. From your experience in either the army, sports coaching, or just life, what does resilience actually look like to you in everyday life?
Do you know what? That's, again, a lovely, you guys, I tell you come up with some awesome questions.
We're good at this, aren't we?
You are good. That for me has changed a lot. I suppose when I was being brought up, resilience kind of was that British stiff upper lip, just get on with it, just do it. And over the years, what I found is that actually resilience like that doesn't last. because it's not it doesn't last long term. Resilience for me is a process of trying, learning, failing, going again, etc. And so one of the joys I had in the army was that I got to do lots of activities, and one of them was becoming a rock climbing instructor. And if I take you to a wall, a nice rock face, for example, outside, and you're scared of heights, if I said to you, right, let's start climbing this now, you're just going to run away because you can't see yourself. And I think resilience is almost having the ability to try a small step, gain confidence, and believe and shift that self-image, that self-belief that, do you know what, I can do this and I can do tough things. It's why I love cold water. Cold water, yes, there's a lot of science around the benefits of it, but for me, it's knowing that it's going to be tough, choosing to do it anyway. And when the waves come through you, like, that's enough, get out, just saying, no, do you know what, I'm okay with this. And learning how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. But it takes small steps. It takes growth. Resilience isn't gritting and whatever. Resilience for me is almost flexibility. It's that, yeah, I can't do this now. So what's the one small step that could take me closer? So going back to the rock climbing, for example, if I just said to you, okay, look, why don't we just put a harness on you today and see how that feels? Because it's a little uncomfortable. It gets right up in your nether regions and everything. And you go, yeah, that's okay. And if I then said, well, look, let me put a rope on. We're going nowhere, but I'm just going to take up the taut, and you feel it take you. And I say, how's that? Yeah, that's good. That's how I can manage that. And I then just said, look, take your feet off the floor and see how it takes you. And you sink into it and you go, oh, that's okay. I'm swinging around now. Great. And then I take everything off and go, right, boom, we'll see you tomorrow. You'd come back tomorrow, you know? And I think all of us just need to learn softness. We need self-love, self-kindness, self-compassion to have a go, to be okay with failing, lose that sense of expectation, both in yourself and in others, and then grow, cultivate, evolve where you're at, that new image of yourself. And in that, you will find the resilience to have another go and another go. And then give yourself time. Who knows where you'll be in a year from now? You might even be on a lovely little podcast.
You might. Who knows? The door is always open. Well, look, I've got one last thing to ask you about, Andy, before Sarah hits you with our new mega question. So you better prepare yourself, because it's the new mega question we're asking our guests. I want to jump back to, and I'm glad you took a deep breath, because this was in the intro. So you've recently launched Breath Shift. Explain the platform, what it is, and how you're hoping it will help people to reconnect with themselves.
So, out of all of the modalities that I coach, breath has been the one that shifts people the most. And if you go through the scientific papers at the moment, there are hundreds of papers being written. If we look at the totality of the science in breath, since 2010, over 60% of the papers were written since 2010. So it is something that we are really interested in right now. And it can shift you. And just like I said about how your nervous system is looking and you react to situations in life, you can't unreact by thinking your way out. You can soften your response with your breath. So, for example, if you're feeling anxious, or, we discussed panic attacks earlier, you can use your breath to soften them, to give space, to then come back. And the biggest thing you've got to understand first off is our thoughts are not truths. Our thoughts are literally our interpretation of the current situation based on our history. All three of us could be in a situation and think about it differently and then respond to it differently because of the way we've come to it. So breathwork is this thing. And I do regular breathwork classes in Trowbridge at the rugby club. They're £10. But I do courses all over the country and people can't get back to my breathwork. So what I came up with was an online system where I know there's breath for anxiety. I know there's different breath for panic attacks, for calming down. I know there's breaths to give you clarity and to energize you, to help you sleep better. So what I've done is each month I will record the full volume of my recordings new. So every month there's new recordings, new music, new backgrounds, new newscapes, so that wherever you are on an app, you will have access to the breath work that you need in that moment. Some are 2 minutes, some are 5, some are 10, 20, etc. So if you need something in the moment, you're just about to step into an office meeting and you're feeling that pang of anxiety come up, just put on the 2 minutes, just breathe with me. If you're at home and you go, oh, I'd love to sort of change my response to those situations, then put on the recording for it. And again, it's just £10 for the whole month. So what I've basically charged you is one breathwork session, but you get over 50 recordings every month that are on your phone whenever you need them. And yeah, like just warm hugs. I'd love, like a little like my music that I've put out recently. I just want to hug everybody, if that makes sense, in a way that makes you seem seen and heard. Because I think all of us in some small way need validity. That should come from within, but until it does, let me help you get there. Let me help you find your way back to you, because out of the 8 billion people on this planet right now, no one has your DNA or is like you. 117 billion people have existed before you, and no one was like you. So stop trying to be like everybody else. The beauty of you in this world is that you are you, that you shine in your beauty in every way. So yeah, come home, love this, and then life changes.
And I wanted to say before we move on to the mega question, glad you mentioned music, because anyone who listens to our show now or watches our show, the intro music is a beautiful instrumental track by your good self, Andy. So it means the world to me, given how long we've journeyed together and how much we've known each other and how much love and respect I have for you, that you are now also the music for the show. So thank you so much as well for gifting us that lovely music to use.
Oh, mate, as I say, you know, we keep on bumping into each other through our little journeys, and it was an absolute privilege and pleasure. I mean, honoured to be asked.
We always bump into each other. So go on, Sarah, hit him with it. This is the bit, we debuted this on the last episode.
Ready?
Hit him with the big question. Limber up.
Are you ready? Yeah, limber up, Andy. So looking back at your journey so far, what are some of the most powerful lessons that you've learned and that you wish more people would understand about growth, well-being, and becoming their authentic selves? And this is the bit. And what's next in your own journey?
Good. God, that is a mega question, isn't it? Oh, look, I think my internet's going down. Okay, very simple. The thing I've learned, and I think is at the crux of everything I do, I always have been, and I always will be enough. I was born enough. We strive for external things in life, status, money, perception, etc. And all of that is absolute bleep, 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 bleep it out. You are you. Don't ever try to be anybody else, because you are not them. Do what works for you. Find your way back to this authentic, aligned version. And when you realize that you are enough, you stop trying to be enough for everybody else. That was my biggest lesson. And that is what I give to people, I think, in through my coaching and my music and my book, etc. What's next? Wowzers. I suppose I'm constantly looking for ways to get to more people, because I think, yes, there's a lot of noise out there and wellness is high on people's agenda, but, I'm not sure that Instagram is the way forward, because you get lost in noise of people who don't really understand it, but want to say what's trending. And so I suppose it's building platforms. So my Breathe Shift is really passionate. I've got, I want to get into wellness retreats. I've got one coming up in July where I want to take people out into the world, because we love travel and it removes you from your current environment. But then I've rewritten my book as Dare to Explore. And it's a journal for you on the retreat where you explore both the locality, but also yourself. And so rather than just going visiting somewhere, I want you to go and cook with the locals. I want you to go and immerse yourself with the people around you and see the lifestyle. So you get the culture, but also ask questions of you when you're not in your current environment, and then helping people shift as they come back into that environment that was potentially unhealthy when they left it, stepping back into it in a healthy way. So yeah, finding more ways to reach people. So hence why this podcast is lovely.
That's really powerful, because it is when you go away. I always find when I go away on holiday or a short break, like my creative juices flow. I eat well, I sleep better. It's getting out of the framework and the surroundings you're in sometimes, isn't it? To see what you need. We have talked about so many things you're doing, so many things you're offering. Our audience, what are the very best ways for them to connect with you, find all the links to, whether it's Breath Shift or the retreats or your book? Where do they go, Andy?
Whilst I slated Instagram a moment ago, probably come to Instagram first. It's dare.to become. I tend to link a lot of things there. My stories are often linking to places. But yeah, and daretobecome.co.uk is my website. The Breathe Shift app and website will be out in probably 2 weeks from now. So out before the end of March. Yeah. And just search Dare to Become, and then ultimately, to all of your listeners, just dare to become you.
Yeah, I mean, you wrote in my book. I was just picking this up again, because I remembered you wrote a lovely inscription, and you wrote, "Dear Ben, keep shining your beautiful light out into the world. Dare to become you," and a little smiley face, because it's obviously you, and you always make me smile. So I'm actually really glad that this episode is so late. Because I think the conversation we've had, Sarah being here, and the energy that's now between the three of us, because I mean, there's a lot of talk about this being, the fire horse year, like this being the year of rebirth. We've all been very burnt out and tired the last few years, and I think certainly Sarah and I are really feeling like renewed energy and love for what we're doing now. And I think absolutely couldn't have asked for. We both got to pick a first guest basically for the new series, and Sarah's was without question Lynn Fernquest, mine was without question Andy Mackenzie. We were like, how do we start this show off, relaunch this show to a whole new audience with the right people? And so for me, you were my number one pick, and I'm delighted. And I just want to encourage people, connect with Andy on social media. Just go to Instagram, get the links, then get off there before you suck up the next hour of your life doom scrolling wellness experts, and go to the man that actually knows what he's doing. And I can say through lived experience from knowing Andy for a long time that he genuinely knows his stuff, and everything we've talked about today is from the heart. So I want to thank you, Andy Mackenzie, for all you're doing in the world and for being on the podcast today. Thank you, Sarah, for being a wonderful co-host. I think we are hitting our stride.
I think we are, definitely. And thank you, Ben, for being a wonderful co-host as well. It's been absolutely lovely today.
And thank you to Jeff Easton from Tool 8 Productions, who brings this and every show we produce to life. Most of all, if you haven't checked out, if this is your first show, then all the good stuff on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, hit that little notification button. That's wonderful. If you're listening, then there's like almost 50 episodes in the back catalogue of Good Journeys, when it was first Good Journeys for Second Mountain, then Good Journeys with Ben Veal, and now what it's going to stay, Good Journeys with Ben Veal and Sarah Moon. It's a bit longer, but it's worth it because you get Sarah's energy. So subscribe to the show. We're on all podcasting platforms. More importantly, share this conversation, this specific conversation with Andy, with someone who you feel needs to hear this today, because that is what this show is all about, is inspiring other people. Until next time, I've been Ben Veal. Our very special guest has been Andy Mackenzie. My wonderful co-host with the most has been Sarah Moon. This is Good Journeys. Keep climbing together, and we will see you all again for another one very, very soon. Bye.